Hi, I'm Tully Meyer, and I am the Community Liaison for McLean Home Care and Hospice. And I am here today with Glynis Cassis, who has been kind enough to come speak with us about her experience with McLean Hospice for her mom. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. From the family perspective, you know, we have the honor and pleasure of caring for your mom. And we always like to know how that changed your perspective on things, for the good, for the bad. Did you have a perception of hospice before your mom was a recipient of our services?
Actually, I did. When I was in graduate school, I took a course that involved hospice and death and dying, of course. And so I was familiar with hospice services in general. That was a long time ago. But so I had a foundation for what it was, and certainly enough that when I thought I might need it, I felt comfortable in going and reaching out there.
That's amazing, because you are the tiniest fraction of the population who would not shy away from learning about such an important topic. Was it different receiving the benefits than you thought it would be before you had a personal experience?
Actually, very different, because knowing about it and having book knowledge and having some study background is very different when it was my mother.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was, I had that foundation of feeling comfortable enough to, I think, reach out to hospice, but actually knowing who I would be talking to, you know, I had to formulate some of the questions. So it was a totally different space that I was in when I actually was, again, my mother.
So if you can think of one thing, and there can be more than one thing that you found most beneficial from having hospice services.
The most beneficial thing, I think, was the assurity that I was doing the right thing or doing everything I could for my mother. That's what prompted my initial contact with them. I know that many people think of hospice as a service that you only reach out to, or that they only provide for you at the very end, possibly, of someone's life. And I knew enough to know that there were supports and services that technically are within this 6-month range of when they may be going towards the end. So I reached out months before it turned out to be that.
That's wonderful, and that is the best utilization, really, of our services. Is time is our greatest ally in hospice. And were there any things you found surprising about the service?
Well, I think it was surprising maybe how personable it was, and I'm not sure how much of that was the hospice itself, or the agency, or the people that I worked with. I'm sure a combination of the both. But I found it very accommodating to me and where I was in terms of dealing with my mother's, her impending death. Again, knowing it and experiencing it and feeling it are two different things.
Absolutely. What would you tell a family who is unsure of whether or not hospice is the right thing to do?
Well, I would probably give them my experience as an example. When I knew that my mother was struggling and that struggle was different, I thought about contacting hospice. So secretly, I was hoping that they would say, you know what, I'm glad you reached out, but you know, it's too early, or something like that.
Of course,
and as it turned out, that wasn't the case, but how that information was given me was in such a way that I was able to hear it and to a greater extent accept it, as opposed to saying, it's probably not the time, or, well, and maybe the time, we'll see, but how it was delivered to me.
And that's such good information for people to have, because it's a great approach. It's nice in a way, like you said, if it can be, you can be reassured that it's not time yet. But it's also nice to not have to look back and say, oh, I could have done this sooner, and we could have had these supports in places. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about your personal story?
I think what stands out for me, and this is really kudos to McLean, is that the people that I work with through McLean from the beginning, when I called hospice, I called not McLean, but I just called a hospice, maybe a hotline or something, and they connected me to McLean. That McLean got back to me right away. I mean, with my questions, with my concerns, and someone explained something to me, and so that was so reassuring, because at that stage of the game, you really need to have people connect with you in a timely way.
Of course.
So that stuck out with me. And then, my experience was with primarily one nurse, one hospice nurse that was assigned to us. So I can speak primarily about her,
yes.
But I can't say enough about the service that she provided, not just for my mother, but equally for me, and
yes.
recognizing that I too, in some respect, was a patient. It turned out that we utilized McLean during that 4 months between the time I made the initial contact and the time that my mother passed. That was time really utilized for us to connect. The social worker from McLean, the staff that was on call when I called at 9 p.m. or 1 a.m., and anyone else I had in contact with, I was assured and had enough time to connect to not just a service, but to people who I know that were serving my mother primarily, and then me, and extended family, as it turned out.
Absolutely, because it's not just the person we're treating, but there's all sorts of dynamics that go on, and you need support too.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, right? So I'm so happy that you had a great experience, and I'm so grateful for you for your agreement to be here today. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.